Okay, we're going to read the remote script, or a short version of it. We're using Zoom webinar for meetings, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as attended. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to this meeting. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed. People registered to be an attendee must use their names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate in discussion. Attendees will join in listening mode. We have all board members here, so we won't do roll call tonight. That'll speed things up. And Eric, I think it gets shorter every time. I think that's good. Right. Okay, we'll call the June 8th, 2022 Select Board meeting to order. There's no changes to the agenda that I know of. Announcements, Libby?
Thank you. So we've got this meeting is being video and audio recorded, as we know. In accordance with this board's committee appointment policy, we are announcing the applications that have been received for the planning board vacancy, which is a joint appointment between the select board and the planning board that will be made on June 22nd. Applicants are Joseph Topham, Emily Kilvert. Actually, did she withdraw? Did she withdraw? Okay.
She withdrew from the alternates.
Okay, sorry. So Joseph Topham, Emily Kilvert, Jeremy Bloomer, and Campbell Sutton. There is no select board meeting next week, June 15th. We're on the summer schedule, which is posted online, and that's it.
There's no follow-up comments from prior select board meetings. Is there any public comment tonight on items that are not on the agenda, either remotely or here tonight? Let's give that a couple seconds, see if anybody wants to raise their hands. Okay, I don't see any, no public comment. There's no new business that I know of. May I have a motion for approval of minutes of June 1st, approval of treasury warrants for June 8th?
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Approval of pending contracts. There's quite a bit in here, so if there's any questions for Libby, or is there anything you wanted to go over at all, Libby?
I didn't really have anything to call out, no.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board?
No, I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's an aye for Matt, too. That passes unanimously. Okay. Citizen Department committee request with applicant introduction review of applicants for everything from Historic Commission down to Zoning Board of Appeals alternate. Let me pull this up on my screen. There are some people here from last week who couldn't be here. We'll get to you at the end. Okay. I'm going to make you wait a little bit. Okay, first up, Historic District Commission Associate, 1 seat available, 0 applicants. Nantucket Affordable Housing, we have 4 seats available and 7 applicants. We have Chantal Blois. Is she here or online? Erica, will you be my eyes on attendees? Okay, Brian Sullivan. Arlene O'Reilly. Jennifer Porter. Meg Brower sent us an email that said that she couldn't make it. Yep. Rima Sherry. And Peter Hoey. Okay. Nantucket Historic Commission with 2 seats available and 4 applicants. We have Linda Williams. Here, no. Abby D Molina. Oh yeah. Oh, Abby. Yep. You come up. Just state your name and thank you.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Abby D Molina. I have lived in Nantucket for 3 years, and as part of living here, I wanted to be a little more involved with the local government. I grew up in a town with very similar governments, select board, and so wanted to contribute back to the community. I guess a little about me, I work for Santander Bank. I do project management. I know people are really passionate about the issues here, so it's a great way, I think, to get involved with the community. I personally like to work based on facts and use a lot of data, so I would bring a very kind of fact-based financial view. So great to see you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Abby. Okay, we have Clement Dirks. Is Clement here? Hi. Yeah, come on up.
Hi, I'm Clement Durkees. I've lived full-time on Nantucket for the last 5 years, 6 years. I joined the Nantucket Historic Commission 3 years ago, not knowing what I was getting into really, but I have so enjoyed the commission, and I think we have contributed to a lot of the issues that have come up in the last 3 years, and we've got a lot of initiatives going forward for the next 3 years, which I certainly would like to be involved with. So thank you for your consideration. You have my application, and I guess that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have Hillary Rayport. Is she online? Here?
She had told me she'd be in person, so maybe she's just
Okay.
late.
She might. Well, speak of the. Hillary, you're up. I was just calling your name.
I'm psychic.
That's actually really good timing. You're very efficient.
I'm so glad I'm here.
Well, if you would have came in later, we would have allowed you to come
Thank
back
you.
up the next one.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Hillary Rayport, and I've been serving as a commissioner on the Historical Commission for 3 years. I serve as its chair. I've served as its chair for 3 years. And you know, we didn't have a historical commission 4 years ago. 4 years ago, it was actually considered to bring it to town meeting to cancel it because it seemed like there was no interest in having a historical commission, and we didn't really know why we needed one. So, you know, there was some interest in the community. I met a lot of people. I came to talk with Jason about forming a historical commission. I came to talk with Libby about forming one, and a whole bunch of us applied, and now we're able to have a historical commission. And the first thing we did was try to figure out, okay, well, what do we do now? What are we supposed to do? We actually had to learn what a historical commission does. It was a huge learning journey for all of us. We didn't really know. We got a lot of help from the state. We didn't have a preservation planner at that point. Now we have a preservation planner, and she arranged some wonderful training for us for there's a group of historical commission commissioners, and they do training. So they came and gave joint training to the HGC and the NHC. And we started to set some priorities, and we've just accomplished things that I think are really wonderful. I hope you think they're really wonderful too. We've become a certified local government, which is a very special designation. It's a partnership with the Park Service and the Massachusetts Historical Commission. It gives Nantucket special access to funding, to training, to technical expertise. We brought nearly $50,000 of grant money. We've restarted the surveying program. Our historic structures hadn't been surveyed in 30 years. So now we're doing that in a really methodical way. And whenever we've come across something that we felt like we wanted to do, but we weren't sure, or we were getting pushback, or we didn't know what to do, we've always asked for help. And there have been so many groups that have been willing to help us. In the state, you know, there's a local government coordinator. They've really helped us. So anyway, I've served for 3 years. I do feel like I have gotten a huge education, which has really advantaged the town. I feel like I have more that I'd like to do, and I really hope that you reappoint me. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Yep. Linda Williams. Also good timing.
I was headed down to the boat to get my car, which was 30th standby yesterday. Finally made it. I think most of you know me anyway, but I spent my entire life on Nantucket. And when I was a child, my grandparents drummed it into our heads that this wasn't just a vacation spot. It was a real special place with a very big history. It started being ingrained when I was young, because when it was a rainy day, I would be in the basement of the library reading every book on Nantucket history and setting and storybook, and listening to the librarian read us books every single time it rained. Back in those days, it rained a lot more. So it was always ingrained to me that this was a place that needed to be preserved, and I've had a long history with that. I have a great deal of experience, not just institutional knowledge about Nantucket after, I hate to say, 67 years. I've been on the HDC, as you know. I have worked with the old surveys. I've worked with Holly extensively. I've worked with the aerials, the accessors, microfilm, done reports for Holly, done extensive histories. I did all the histories for the Friends House Tour every year, and that including the settings, how an area developed, what the long-term history was. So I pretty much know every inch of Nantucket by now. One of my histories I give all my histories to Holly to help them with the surveys. I did one that was 100 pages long. I understand the difference between the HDC, which is a regulatory board, as opposed to the Historical Commission, which is an advisory board. They both have a very critical place in preserving Nantucket. We need to work together, particularly in sensitive settings when we could be more active, I expect, at the HDC when they're dealing with a structure that impacts an historic setting. So I think there's a way to work together with the DPW, with the Board of Selectmen, with the state, with the Historic District Commission. I think that needs to be done more of. Nantucket is more than just historic structures. It is settings, it is context, it is preserving what makes Nantucket special into the future. We're going to be long gone, and hopefully the next generation will pick up the torch to keep going, keep Nantucket what it looks like, and the ambiance that people come here for. I have a lot of clients that have dealt with historic structures, and I've implemented scanning of these structures. I was involved with the CPC project where we were getting scans for a PIN for Marty, who was doing scanning on the structures. So I was involved with getting him the structures, actually historic structures, to scan. And I'm continuing on with Anton, who is scanning my historic structures before they ever go to the HDC in order to preserve those structures. I'd like to promote the tax credits, which is something that people are afraid of because they think it's going to be over controlling or they're going to lose something in the process. We need to educate, we need to promote it, because it really is the only way for us to legally preserve the interior of a structure with help from Mass Historic Commission. Not enough of that is being put out there. As I say, people are skeptical of it and afraid they're going to lose some sort of control over it, and they're really not. And all these people seeking tax credits have to come before the Historical Commission in order to get their blessing or have a dialogue about it before it goes up to Mass Historic. So I think that has to be done. I'm a big advocate of updating the 1989 surveys, which I work with in many cases, and in many cases they are incorrect. It's an ongoing project that Holly's managing. Right now, the initial phase is only 100 of the fish lots. I'd like to expand it, and I've had a long conversation with Holly about that, to areas, so you can see the area context and the area histories, and do all structures on Nantucket. I can help with that because I've been doing it for a long time on my own anyway. We have the benefit of an outstanding professional preservation planner. Holly Backus is the best thing that's ever happened here as far as the town getting involved with historic preservation. I was involved years ago on the scholarship committee when we kept giving her money to finish her education, which she did very well. And she has worked tirelessly to try to get the HDC and everybody else to pay attention to the historic aspects of not just the structures, but of the settings that they're in. I'd like to become more active in historic preservation as opposed to the architectural side at the HDC, especially when there's a tremendous amount of pressure on the historic aspects of Nantucket, the sidewalks, the streets. I had to use the word ambiance, but it's part of the context of the Nantucket historical aspect that people come here for. So I think advocacy is necessary, and I see the Historical Commission as being a big component of advocating for historic preservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I think we'll go in reverse and go back to the Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust because I see Chantal Blois is on. I'm going to bring her on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity to reapply for my seat on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I joined the trust about 6 months ago, and what drew me to this particular group was my personal experience with homelessness on the island, from couch surfing to doing the Nantucket Shuffle, and of course my time working for Housing Nantucket, and seeing firsthand the difficulties that people face on the island when trying to find housing. I think one of the things that often gets overlooked is the uniqueness of not just looking for housing on an island that only has so much to offer, but also being an immigrant on the island and being a person of color, that there are certain nuances that we have to navigate that often gets overlooked when we have these larger conversations. And being a part of the trust over the last 6 months has really offered me the opportunity to really and truly be an advocate and a voice for people, that not just the Nantucket as a whole, but also for people particularly that look like me and that experience many of my personal experiences dealing with housing on the island. And I would very much appreciate the opportunity to continue that work. I feel like 6 months is such a short time, but it has really given me a great insight into the amazing work that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund has been doing on the island, and has allowed me the opportunity to share some of those works with the community as a whole, and would very much like to continue those efforts. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Chantal. Right, we wanted to thank everyone from the Historic Commission applicants. All four were here speaking tonight. Thank you. Okay, Planning Board alternate. We have 1 seat, 3 applicants. Abby D Molina.
Hi, thank you again. I applied to these two. And part of the reason I applied to the planning board is, as I mentioned, I'm interested in using kind of a database, fact-based way to assess things. And also, I just thought it was one of the more interesting committees, and I wanted to learn more about it. And as I said, become more involved with the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Elizabeth O'Rourke. Are they here online? Okay. Campbell Sutton. Thought I saw Campbell here.
Hi. Oops. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. Okay, so I'm Campbell Sutton. I don't have all the things that other people have to say. I've been living here. My family's been here since 1986. Please excuse my tremor. It just affects me when I speak, especially when I'm nervous. So there you go. And I think what I said in my packet is pretty good. And I was trying to think of some of the things that, as a board, you might be concerned about with me participating in committees and things. And I think, like my parents, my independent thinking and my independent streak can sometimes appear that I'm going against the grain for where the majority is going. And I don't do that lightly. And for instance, I think I've tried to put 2 citizens petitions forward regarding 5,000 square foot lots and trying to address density issues on those. I have 2 reasons for that. One, safety is what drives me in the planning process. So, or in really, even when I was on the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, it's really the safety of people, of traffic, of animals, of our community. And I'm concerned that as we develop housing, we may be forgetting to think about homes, where people live. So we have lots of people living in small areas, which in my mind has ample opportunity for negative ramifications, from drug use to
family abuse, all the psychological things that they say that can come from living in tight quarters with financial concerns, which are really the people that we're going to be, housing. And the areas that we're looking at putting them in, we have very limited parks. These 5,000 square foot lots, they end up being developed, so all there is a parking lot. You have your side yard setbacks, which are generally planted with something to shield the housing, and then you have parking lots that are overflowing. As many of you know, I live in residential areas that have this sort of dense housing, and the sidewalks are covered with cars. The only place that people or kids can walk is down the middle of the road. And these are concerns that I have. So that's sort of what drives me. I'm not just trying to go against the grain. I'm really trying to think about, once they're developed, what are we actually offering people in terms of housing and homes? Because I think that's what we are hoping to provide for people, is home, someplace that they can go to, feel comfortable, feel safe, have their kids go outside, not worry about being run over. We could start thinking about having parks in more dense residential districts or something. But anyway, so I just sort of wanted to explain that, because I think sometimes I'll look like, I don't know what I look like really, but I know that and I do say these things when they come up at the planning board or in other situations. So it's not like I go to town meeting and then suddenly people are like, wow, I didn't hear that. Now, they may not have listened when I said it. I totally get it. But I do say these things. So to that, in the town meeting, I believe in open government like we have. I believe that the voters are the legislators, and that the select board is the executive branch, and it is our job as voters, citizen voters and citizen legislators, to bring issues to the fore and not just pass everything because so-and-so said so, or it's been approved over here. That's always lovely, we all like that. But I think there are some issues that should be debated at town meeting, and I like to bring those forward. I don't go out and drum up support. I don't talk around town. I don't pack the house to get my vote. I bring it up at town meeting, which I think is appropriate, and allow people to have a voice. And so that's really the function of what I do there. I'm not trying to harangue people or anything. And sometimes I go for clarity, because I think it's important that the people present fully understand what's being said. And sometimes I think they're just like, oh, okay, what have you. And so, like for the apartment expansion and the special permit that applies to, then the planning board can sort of have influence over the type of housing, if it's employee housing or not. But I thought it was important that people didn't walk away with the impression that that was guaranteed, that that's what would happen in these situations with the apartment. So I go on. I have obviously a lot to say, and I don't talk to a lot of people, so forgive me. But I do hope that you will consider my application in both cases. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Campbell. You spoke just fine tonight. Okay, Real Estate Assessment Committee. We have one seat available and one applicant. Mr. Lee Saperstein. How are you, Lee?
Members of the board, thank you for having me. I realize I'm unopposed, and so I'm here for two reasons. One is to show willingness, and the second is because the activities of our committee directly link into your activities. Our reports are part of your background for any votes taken on takings and conveyances. And so I'm happy to answer questions if you have any. Otherwise, thank you.
I think we're okay. Thank you, Lee. Thanks for being here. Roads and right of way, we have 3 seats available and 3 applicants. Mr. Bill Greeter, is he here online? Okay.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for the invite. But I'm comfortable just submitting my application and saying thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah. Alan Reinhardt, is he online? Here, Rick Atherton.
Hi, Jason.
Hi, Rick. Go ahead. We can hear you.
So I am online like Bill Greeter when you have a committee where there are 3 incumbents and 3 openings. I think what I'd like to say briefly is that the committee has a real role in providing public access to the waters all around the island, be they beaches or ponds. And I think the Chapter 91 issues that the committee reviews are very important. I think my service as a member of the select board helps bring background to those discussions, and I do seek reappointment and hope you'll take that into consideration. And I look forward to serving another 3-year term. Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, Scholarship Committee. We have 2 seats available, 2 applicants. We have Jean Miller. Is she here or online? And Rebecca Woodley. Sorry, Oliver. Is Rebecca here? Nope. All right, well, there's 2 seats, so they're most likely in. Thank you for applying. Tree Advisory Commission, 2 seats available, 0 applicants. After last week, maybe there'll be some applicants coming in, right? And we'll have to redo this again. Zoning Board of Appeals, 1 seat available, 1 applicant. That's Susan McCarthy. She online? She here? And Zoning Board of Appeals, 1 seat available, 0 applicants.
I will note for the ZBA alternate that Jim Mondani did submit his application, but it was late.
I'm sorry?
Jim Mondani for the ZBA alternate.
Oh, okay.
He submitted a late application, so he'll be in the summer round.
Okay. And there were some people last week who couldn't make it, so they're here tonight. So we have for Airport Commission, we have Walter Flaherty.
Hi, I'm few words, Walter Flaherty. I retired for the 3rd time, so I do have some available time now to serve on a committee if I'm appointed. I worked out the airport for about 24 years with Cape Air and JetBlue, so I do have some background with everything going on out there. So I'd just like you to consider me for the application I submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. And then for Conservation Commission, we have Maureen. Maureen, are you here? Yep.
Excuse me. Good evening, Select Board members. I'm Maureen Phillips, and I am applying for reappointment to the CONCON. I want to give you a bit of my personal background, which I think might be relevant. My husband, Doug Horst, and I first came here in 1975, and we rode bikes out to Nantucket, and we didn't realize how significant an action that would be. We wound up buying a house in '89, and then Doug came to work at the Cottage Hospital as gastroenterologist in 2000, and many of you may know him, I hope, to good event. I was involved then in the Nantucket Preservation Trust Board and started getting involved in environmental issues in Nantucket. And that led me to actually go back and get another law degree in environmental law. My first law degree was given 40 plus years ago when I don't think there was even an environmental law class, let alone a degree available. So all of that led me here. And my first thing to say to you all is you have my deep, deep thanks for having appointed me 3 years ago. It has been a fulfilling, educational, incredibly rewarding time working on this. And I've also had the opportunity to get involved with the Mass Association of Conservation Commissioners as well. I'm about halfway through getting my certification as a commissioner through their education programs. As most of you know, the CONCOM works a wide variety of applicants. We looked at septic systems, we look at sand fences, basements, landscapes, and boiling it all down, the most important thing we do is to be fair in how we make our decisions. We're administering both state law and Nantucket bylaw, and we need to look completely and solely at the law and the facts. That is what we do. And that way we're able to work with a vast majority of applicants. Just to give you a quick piece of data, in 2021, we considered more than 100 notices of intent. And I was really surprised to learn that was more than any other town in the Commonwealth, including Boston, including Barnstable. So we have a very wide and ranging job of work to do. And what's really important is that we're consistent across the board since we have so many. Mansions and sheds get the same attention, and that is really, really important. And we need to look at only what the impact on the environment is and not the names and addresses of people who are applying. Now, you all are facing a very important task, the Coastal Resiliency Plan execution. It's a huge responsibility, and I believe that the Conservation Commission is a really important partner for you to work with. There's going to be a lot of knowledge necessary, a lot of care and thought, and also some courage involved in making those decisions. My time on the Conservation Commission has led me to wish to be reappointed because I believe my experience and my service truly supports your vote to provide me with the opportunity to continue this really important work. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Also from the Conservation Commission, I think Mike Mizzarelli is here.
Hi there, Mike Mizzarelli. I've been an island resident for over 30 years. I currently serve the Fertilizer Advisory Board and the Tree Advisory Committee for the town. I've recently wrapped up a longstanding commitment to private board and would appreciate your consideration for the Conservation Commission. As I stated on my application, I think I can be fair-minded, and the island faces many challenges related to climate change and sea level rising, and I would appreciate your consideration to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Do we also have a FinCom member here? Is Jeremy Bloomer here? Hey, if you'd like to speak, you can.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Bloomer, and I'm here because considering joining the planning board. And my background is I've been in the finance industry. I've been an entrepreneur. I've started a number of businesses, including an investment bank, an insurance company. I do a lot in the biotech world. And I have been living in Nantucket full-time for the last 7 years. We've had a house here for about 20 years. I have time now because my kids are all grown and through college and are off to jobs. I have sat on about 15 different boards, some public, and I have the time available and I have a great interest in Nantucket. And I would be curious, I know this is for me to tell you about myself, but I'm not certain I necessarily understand the process that all of you go through in selecting someone for the planning board.
Sorry, Eric, is it planning or?
I'm so sorry. I had let Jason know that you were here for FinCom, but then I realized that you were in the round 2 for FinCom because your application was late.
Oh,
and we're
okay.
actually doing planning board applicants on the 22nd, when you've got the planning board members here with you.
Okay.
Well,
I am interested also in the finance committee or finance board. Put it this way, I live in Nantucket. I am very interested in seeing how I can help. I do now have time. And I think my experience of, unfortunately, over 40 years in finance and having started many companies. So I'm not just working in a big financial institution, but I was an entrepreneur starting many companies. Has provided me a great deal of experience that I would hope to be able to bring to bear.
Thank you. We'll be probably seeing you again.
Okay.
I believe that's all. Was there anybody else here who couldn't speak last week, online or here? Erica, check. Okay, thank you all for coming. Like I said last week, you can sneak out right now. You don't have to stay for another hour if you don't want to. No judges will be made. I think we'll, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. You can go. Okay, we'll move on to the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee quarterly report. We have Vince here, and Mary's online. Mary Longacre.
Sorry, I'm making every effort not to waste paper, so I've got my laptop. Everyone able to hear me okay? I've had volume issues before. So quite simple, aside from a cough. This is the first of hopefully many quarterly reports at the committee's pleasure, at the select board's pleasure, of course. So it took a little bit longer than anticipated to develop this first quarterly report. It does take time to get the first one right, as you might expect. So this is just the quarterly report from January to the end of March, and just kind of quickly outline what was covered in those 3 months. So some of the highlights were information from Chuck Larson, the town special project manager. He did a terrific study on, beg your pardon, the Easy Street area. And one of the big things he saw is that by 2040, there's a potential for Easy Street to flood as many as 100 times per year. We also had a wonderful design thinking workshop that we did at the beginning of March. Some of you here in this room participated in that. That had some terrific outcomes, including a very short list of just do it action items that we have started to find ways to progress forward. Another big thing that happened in the first quarter of the year was Remain invited me to put some questions into a survey that they were redoing from 1 year previous. And we got to put in some questions about the Coastal Resilience Plan. And we got to ask some very broad public questions. And in a wonderful either show of support from the public or public realization that the public identified the same thing that this Coastal Resilience Plan did, that the steamship wharf is the single most at-risk structure on island, and it is the one that people are most worried about, and that was very clear from the Remain report. So, thanks. The Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee is looking to progress, based on some of this, the downtown neighbourhood flood barrier, which is recommendation 2.6, and we're also looking at how we could move forward in recommendation 2.1 for the resilience for Steamboat Wharf and that area by itself. We actually had the General Manager, Bob Davis from SSA, come and speak on January 25th, and we actually got very good information from him on that day and their plans for what they intend to do for that wharf. They do want to finish their work at Woods Hole first. Nantucket is on their to-do list. They reckon they're Matt, you might be able to correct me. Was it about 8 years out from being able to do anything on Nantucket? But that's just because it's on their to-do list. It's a financing issue as much as anything else. But that is also a good thing because we can now plan to work with them over time and match up our town efforts with their efforts, hopefully. We also began a shoreline change monitoring program. I've reported to the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee on this a few times now at this point, and this is something we're going to continue to increase and enhance over time and move from basic rudimentary methods into more technological methods. The next thing on the list is to update the local sea level rise scenarios. This is something that the committee is researching at the moment, and this is kind of just a heads up to the select board. At some point in the next while, we shall hopefully be bringing forward another, the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee will be bringing forward another updated recommendation to the select board based on new information that came out from NOAA in February. So there's terrific updated information in that. There was also some IPPC information that came out about the same time, which is also very, very valuable for the committee and the select board to know about. We've started looking at various grants as well. The committee has, as have I. We spoke to MVP. We also later spoke to CZM, the Massachusetts Office of Coastal Zone Management, and based on our on talks and feedback from them, we decided to undertake a CZM grant, which will actually be submitted within the next few days. We also undertook a letter of interest for direct technical assistance from FEMA, and we also undertook my favorite acronym of the year, NIFWIF, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. We undertook a grant application to them. So the committee did have some requests. They would like to know if there are any issues or current or upcoming issues that you would wish to put before the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. And they also wanted to make the recommendation, or the request, I beg your pardon, to expand the environmental goals of the strategic plan to include implementation of the 40 recommendations from the CRP over the next 10 years. With that, that's about what we have. I know Mary's online, so if you have questions for her or for me, I'm ready.
Any questions or comments? Vince? Mary, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Jason.
Oh,
I wanted to add, for the public's benefit, the report is included in the select board packet for tonight's meeting, and many of the items have links where you can get more information about those if you're interested. Also, of course, our meetings are recorded and available on the town's YouTube channel. I wanted to also thank Vince and the Natural Resources Department for the tremendous amount of work that they have been doing in this first part of the year. I'm just really thrilled at everything that Vince is accomplishing. And so thank you to Vince and to the department for that. And finally, I wanted to sort of put a theme on this report, which is that my goal has always been to connect different parts of the community around coastal resilience. So you can see in the report here, we're connecting with town departments, we're connecting with other organizations that are involved in resilience, we're connecting with the public, in this case through the Remain Survey, and we're connecting with experts off island. And I can see a really important part of the work that we do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Any other comments? Well done, Vince, to you, Natural Resources, and Mary, and everybody on your committee. Thank you. Okay, next up, Verizon requests to add 42 feet of a new conduit to existing 12-inch sleeve. This is on a Milestone Road. Eric, are you taking us through that, or is there anybody here?
We do have somebody from a Verizon rep
okay.
here. His name is
Ross. Hey, Ross.
Ross?
Yes, good evening. How are you?
Good, go ahead.
Okay, Verizon is looking to place 42 feet of two 4-inch conduits underneath Milestone Road. I know this says through an existing 12-inch sleeve, but this is not worded correctly. It needs to be adjacent to that 12-inch sleeve. I guess this is to connect to the pieces of conduit like you have shown that were originally approved back in October, I believe. So again, we're looking to place the conduit, but it's just adjacent to the existing sleeve because we can't fit any more conduits under there. We did the excavation work to test to see if we could, and turns out we can't fit anything else through there. So,
Eric, do you have anything?
So my understanding, the reason why this wasn't a public hearing is because they were using the existing sleeve to do the work and it wasn't new. Because this was going to piggyback on that approval from 2021. So I'm not sure how
Technically,
this
do we have
should
to
proceed.
I think since it's, I mean, maybe Ross knows, but I think since the conduit itself is already there and this is just an additional going in, it's not really, it's not a new concept. It's just additional infrastructure going in the same spot.
that's essentially what it is. We're gonna use that same pathway, but it needs to be placed adjacent to the existing sleeve. We're not going through that existing sleeve because we can't fit anymore. It's just going adjacent to that.
Does this change the scope of the work at all? As in, has to be shut down, or sidewalks or bike paths be?
It depends on how they're going to install it. It looks like it's going underneath, not opening the road. Is that correct, Ross?
Yeah, that'd be correct.
You're going to do directional drilling or something?
Correct, 100% directional bore for this install. It'd still be the same kind of methods. We'd have to tie in on each side. So either way, we'd have to tie in on each side and you know, put something through there. This is just going to change. We're going to use directional boring to, you know, get that new conduit through that pathway.
Okay, and I would assume that you would obviously dig safe that area first.
Absolutely.
And as a precaution, we'll just make sure that we'll check with the utilities too to make sure they don't have anything in that area. Because I think we thought the whole time it was part of the original sleeve.
Is this for an existing, like a residential building, or is this just for general service?
I believe they're trying to underground the wires across Milestone Road.
That's correct.
Okay.
So this has, the positive impact here is power outages related to house moves.
It's going to be a game
because
changer.
It's going to be, yeah, this is really important
Great.
for recycling houses in affordable housing.
Thank you, Brooke.
Although this isn't power, it's phone, right?
Still lines though, right?
But okay, so even if it's not power, but the idea that it simplifies the process of moving through that.
Verizon is one of the lower lines on it, so to get their lines underground would be great because the power obviously is the highest one, so you have a little more leeway there, but getting those low ones out of the way is helpful.
Okay, so my next question is, I'm gonna channel Matt here. Is there a way to partner to do it all rather than piecemeal?
I think Ross would have to answer that, because if the other utilities haven't already prepared for this, it takes quite a long time to do the necessary engineering work. But I don't know if National Grid already has taken care of this. I'm just not sure.
So, Brooke, are you asking to have them sneak in a couple extra conduit just for the future?
I guess I'm asking the question, why things happen, why there's not better collaboration among the utilities in terms of projects like this, I guess.
Do you have 8 hours?
Yeah, I
for
know.
us to
It
go
may be a
over that?
rhetorical question.
Or magic wand?
I did. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, how's everybody feel? Don?
Well, I mean, getting any lines buried is a goal of ours. So I think that that's a real positive from both a host move perspective, but also a visual perspective. And I don't have any concerns with this.
Yeah. Okay. Need a motion, correct?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ross, for coming tonight.
Thank you for your time. Take care.
Okay, we'll move on to public hearings. We'll open the public hearing to consider utility petition from National Grid. This is for, let me find the street here, Meter Street. This is a handhole. Anybody here to speak on this?
Yep, we have Jose Vasquez from National Grid on
Okay,
tonight.
Hi, good evening, members of the board and residents of Nantucket. Yes, my name is Jose Vasquez, and I'm one of the engineers for National Grid. And as you can see here by the sketch, we're petitioning to install about 80 feet of PVC conduit encased in concrete to a new handhole to provide service for the new residents, number 21 Meter Street.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Would anybody like to speak on this from the public? Okay, any questions for National Grid?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you. We'll open a public hearing to consider utility petition for 90 feet of a conduit for 26 Quindet Road.
Jose is going to review that as well.
Okay. Good evening, board. Yes, I'm back again. And yeah, so in this case, we will be getting putting conduits underground from an existing pole across the street. So we'll put 50 feet under the road, concrete encased, and to feed a handhold that would feed the new electrical service for house number 26 Quindet Road.
Okay, this is public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? Any hands raised, Erica?
None that I see.
Okay, Dawn?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion
Is that
to-
aye, Matt? Aye. Yeah.
Motion to approve.
Aye.
Oh.
Oh, second. Sorry.
Oh.
I jumped to the vote.
Ourselves.
Jump to the vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Thank you. That's usually my MO. I skip things to speed up the meeting. Okay, town manager's report.
Thank you. I wanted to mention, it was brought to my attention that we inadvertently left a little item off the announcements, which is that Juneteenth falls on Sunday, June 19th this year. It's always on June 19th, but it falls on a Sunday. Town offices will be closed in recognition on Monday, June 20th. And as part of that recognition, our DEI director, Kamal McCarthy, Dr. Kamal McCarthy, will be giving a presentation on Sunday via Zoom. And it will be a presentation on his dissertation for his PhD. And it will be very interesting, and it relates to the African Meeting House and the visitation of it as a museum by African Americans. That's a very broad description of it. It's much more detailed than that. And he also will be giving an update to you all at your meeting on June 22nd. And information about the Zoom Juneteenth item will be on the town's website.
Thank you, Libby. Yeah.
I'd also like to add that Nantucket Equity Advocates and the African Meeting House are partnering on a Juneteenth celebration as well.
Oh, great.
Details to come via social media. It will include the tour of the Colored Cemetery with Fran Kartinen again this year. It was a big hit last year. And so lots to happen that day, which is great.
Thanks. Okay, so we are requesting that the board schedule a public hearing for what we're calling surface water and groundwater protection regulations. And prior to COVID, myself, the Natural Resources Director, and the Public Health Director were working on these regulations, and they got completely derailed, and we managed to get them back on track last summer. And we had a lot of things that kept us from being very consistent about it. We have had them reviewed by legal. We've spent quite a bit of time on them, but we've had to come back to them repeatedly because other things keep getting in the way. So we've finally got a draft. It's in your packet. And the purpose of the proposed regs is to establish an enforcement process for unregulated water flows, such as swimming pool, drainage, and other water discharge that could be detrimental to the environment. And it's mostly discharge from properties onto public property. And Jeff and Roberto are here and they can answer additional technical questions. It's kind of a phase one of an overall effort to get into place more comprehensive stormwater management regulations and/or a bylaw, and we haven't totally landed on which one of those is going to be, but it does take quite a bit of focused work, and we just have not been able to progress them as we'd like, because there's so many other things going on, but that would be our phase 2. So tonight, we're just asking that you schedule a public hearing, which we will do sometime probably in July, if you all agree. And I don't know, Jeff or Roberto, if you guys want to elaborate on any of that, if I maybe didn't get to any of the details. Question, okay.
I think the only thing I would want to know, if there's any, like, what does the public need to know now to alert them for this public hearing? Something to think about.
Well,
I know they can read it in the packet, but like, what are the main?
Well, it will be advertised in the paper for 3 weeks, and there will be a posting online, probably on, I'm not sure on what page yet, but we'll try to get some public outreach out on it. And we do have a plan for implementation if the regs are so adopted. That will involve some public outreach and notifications and things like that.
Maybe we'll need new hires in the next fiscal year for enforcement and.
Not this level. Once we get into the stormwater, that may be needed, but at this level, we believe it can be handled with existing staff.
Okay, sorry. My last question is, you said most of this is from private property onto public property. So someone's got a hose or a sump pump in their basement onto the street, and it's creating damage. But with pools, that most likely doesn't come on the public property. So how?
Jeff, do you want to address that, please? Thanks.
I think pools are going to be, people had their eye on that for a while. Reed and I were talking about it a lot years ago before COVID. So
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Jeff Carlson, Natural Resources Director. So the genesis of these really came from a lot of complaints that we were receiving about pools being discharged into public ways, and dealing with those and kind of getting a handle on that. It's something that is at this point fairly common practice when you drain pools down. To a lot of people contain on the property, some people just discharge to the street, but to give us a mechanism to enforce if it becomes a nuisance or a problem, or really the way the regulations are designed to even be made aware that it's going to happen, so we can inspect and deal with that. And then there are other types of discharges that come up that aren't necessarily related to pools, but have the similar impacts, whether it's sump pumps or basement drains or things that get discharged to the street. The other common one that we see, there's a current process in place for temporary dewatering permits, where there's a process right now where if you want a temporary dewater, you come in, you get signatures from a number of town offices and a final sign off from town administration, but there's no regulatory backing that's requiring people to do that. And this also establishes that as kind of the step one to get us to the larger stormwater regulations. So we're trying to fill in some cracks and some original needs until the bigger program rolls out. But I think we're pretty satisfied with the draft that we've put forward.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, I think it's great that you're so far. What is the National Swimming Pool Foundation? Who are they? Because you guys are following their recommendations. And how do they deal with saltwater pool discharge?
Yes, the National Swimming Pool Foundation is actually the national group that certifies all the certified pool operators. They hold the license, and they are the ones who research into best practices. They're kind of like the ASTM crew for certification. And what they have, they actually have a checklist and a guidelines, a step-by-step instructions. Thank you. They have step-by-step instructions on how to dechlorinate or desalt a pool. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't tell you how to remove the salt, but you do neutralize it with a powdered agent. What they do is they put it into the pool, it flocculates, it drops to the bottom, they vacuum it up, and then you test the water to make sure it's pH neutral and that the total dissolved solids is removed, and then they start discharging it there. They do have, we have the manual in our office. I'd be happy to bring it in or have you look at it if you want to.
No, I don't need to go through it, but yeah, I'm sure someone will. And the reason I'm asking is some municipalities allow, chlorine is fairly simple to deal with. You leave it for 7 or 10 days, you test it, and you can, some municipalities allow you to discharge it into the storm drain, into the street, but they don't allow you to discharge the saltwater pools because of it creates some chemicals that don't ever go away. So if what you're describing has taken care of that, that would be great. So that's what we have to find out to make sure that we're following, the right thing.
Yeah, it takes care of it to the extent possible in that it turns it into a solid. But you are absolutely right. When it does bond, because of the way the salt water is, a lot of times that the sodium that gets brought off is what usually kills off the plants, but that chlorine is what stays behind. That's a little bit harder to take care of. That's sodium that gets pulled off of it into solution. So you're absolutely right. Once it bonds, it's a little bit different. You have to bond, without getting too scientific, it has to bond covalently so that they can flocculate at the bottom. It's a little bit harder to do, and it takes a lot of chemicals. So you are adding chemicals to remove a contaminant. It is not ideal. So that is a problem, and maybe that's a discussion we will have about saltwater pools in general.
And because I think the perception was, that's great, salt water. We have lots of salt water. This will be wonderful. That was kind of what we were thinking 5 or 10 years ago. And I think as you dig into it, you realize, oh, wait a minute, it's not necessarily. So I'm glad that we're looking into it at the level that you're at. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Brooke?
I know we're talking about discharge of the water, but it sounds to me like then there's a solid that has to be dealt with in the end. And what's the protocol for that?
The solid just gets vacuumed out and it's brought into the same filter, the same bucket as always. It is a non-hazardous material, the final product, and it can be thrown away in the general garbage. Problem is you need to add a chemical to do it, and everyone has to buy it. It's a controlled chemical, thing like that.
Okay.
Once the final product is safe, the products you have to buy to make it a safe product aren't necessarily. That's why it's an issue.
Okay.
I would just like to note that Roberto said covalent bonding, which is pretty cool. That's select board meeting.
My minor was in chemistry.
And that you could pronounce it is even better.
I remember my chemistry day. That was a chemistry minor school. I got out as fast as I could.
The pool servicers
Yes, the pool servicers in general, they all
could
have
contain
those
this
chemicals.
and do this.
They already do it. So one of the primary chemicals that they use is muriatic acid to start bonding into the salt, and the pool companies do have it. The reason I say it's a little bit dangerous is you want to hire somebody to do it, because if you buy it yourself, let's just say the Nantucket Cottage Hospital can't handle the burn that you'll have. So let the pool company take care of the dechlorination of your pool.
All right, thank you. This is great. Is there a motion to request to schedule this public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, select board reports, comments, any committee reports? Nothing? Okay, on to continue discussions on short-term rental work group framework.
Jason,
Yes?
before you get to that, do you want to just go to the public hearings too and do the motion to continue that while
Sure.
you've got your full
Yeah,
board?
let's do that first. Is there a motion to
Motion
continue?
to continue the public hearing to September 7th.
Second.
Sorry. Jumping over you.
Whatever you guys are doing down there, go ahead. What was it?
Motion to continue the public hearing to September 7th.
Did you second it?
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That was good.
That was good, Matt.
And just in case anybody's wondering why the date is out so far, I had spoke with Arthur Reed, who represents the applicant, and it takes time to get through HDC. So
Yeah.
they just wanted to make sure that they had enough time to continue working on that process.
Jason, I'm going to recuse myself for the upcoming conversation.
Okay.
Me too.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Don. Okay, I think tonight we're going to start off with Town Council John Giorgio to have a conversation about who needs to step away from this conversation. And John, you've got some conversations with the Ethics Commission, and so I'll let you take it from there. Get us started.
John, you're muted.
We'll tap.
So you can't unmute him, can you, on your end? Okay. There we go.
I think I'm unmuted now. Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. And congratulations to Brooke on her election to the board.
Thank you.
So, yes, Jason, I have had a preliminary conversation with an attorney for the Ethics Commission. And I explained to him the situation we have with the appointment of this short-term rental work group that, as we all know, was created by a vote of town meeting and referred to, and the two articles, the zoning articles, were referred to this work group for further study. And he suggested that I request from the board a vote tonight authorizing me to request guidance from the State Ethics Commission, which, if you do vote in favor of that, I will send him an email tomorrow addressing the conflict of interest questions, which I am going to go through with you tonight. And so I apologize because this gets pretty complicated. But first of all, by way of background, it's my understanding that the Select Board does not intend to appoint any of its own members as members of this work group. But you've also decided that you want to have a broad representation on this work group consisting of advocacy groups, both for, or I guess what I would characterize in favor of further restricting short-term rentals, and other groups that supported the planning board zoning article. And that's all well and good, but it does inform some of the conflict of interest issues. So by way of background, we've done some work today on trying to identify the scope of short-term rentals on Nantucket. And as you know, short-term rentals are required to register with the Department of Revenue. And based upon a spreadsheet that has been provided, there are approximately 1,880 registered short-term rentals on Nantucket. There are also approximately, and it depends upon how you do the count, but a conservative estimate is there are 14,000 residential units on Nantucket. And I do have a GIS map that was produced showing the location of the short-term rentals. Now, if you look at 14,000 total residential units and 1,880 short-term rentals comprise approximately 13.4% of all residential units on the island. I then asked the GIS folks to give me an estimate as to how many properties on Nantucket abut a short-term rental. And the answer was there are approximately 7,134 residences that abut a short-term rental. That equates to approximately 50.1% of all residents on Nantucket abut a short-term rental. So why is any of that even relevant to this discussion, you might ask? And the reason why that's relevant is even if someone has a financial interest, on a particular matter, if that financial interest is shared by a substantial portion of the population, then those individuals may proceed nevertheless to deliberate and vote on a matter. And the State Ethics Commission defines substantial portion as 10% or more of the population. So that obviously, the 10% threshold is clearly met if you compare the number of short-term rentals to total residential units at 13.4%, and even more drastically in terms of persons who abut short-term rentals, which is about 50%. Are there any questions about that so far?
Very interesting. Brooke?
Yeah. John, my thought is there are 1880 properties that are short-term rentals, but does that reflect owners? And is there a difference between, like, if somebody, if there were owners that own multiple and so the number of actual individuals fell below the 10% threshold?
Yeah, Brooke, that's an excellent question, and I'm not sure that we're able to provide that level of analysis for you. I will say that 1880 are the number of short-term rentals registered with the Commonwealth. There could very well be more than that. And one of the things we will be doing over the next 6 months or so is setting up the rental registration program pursuant to the bylaw. And we may have a better handle on the actual number of short-term rentals. But I think for purposes of this analysis, I think we can stick with the percentages that I gave you.
Okay, thank you.
So I think there are 4 categories of operators, I will say. Well, not operators. There are 4 categories of individuals that merit an analysis under the conflict of interest law. The first category would be an individual who owns and operates a short-term rental themselves. And does that individual would that individual have a prohibited financial interest as a member of this work group? Which would essentially preclude them from deliberating or voting on any proposals that might come before the work group. The second one is if an individual is either engaged in the short-term rental industry or has an employer who is engaged in the industry, meaning they are an operator's agent. And that's a technical term under the short-term rental law. But an operator's agent would include a real estate agent, a hosting platform, or a property management company, generally speaking. So if you work for a real estate agency, which that part of its business rents out to short-term rentals, then your employer has a financial income in the outcome of this work group's deliberations. And I'm going to get to the analysis specific to each of these categories in just a moment. The third group would be individuals who are either officers or directors or otherwise represent the interests of nonprofit advocacy groups on the island with respect to the short-term rental, zoning and other regulations. So these would be organizations such as Act Now, and I think the other one is Nantucket Together, if I'm not mistaken. So those would be, and I'd have to get a bit more analysis on exactly their corporate structure. But if you are an officer or director of one of those organizations, or if you just otherwise are representing their interests, excuse me, would you have a prohibited financial interest? And then the last category would be the what happens if you own a property on Nantucket that abuts a short-term rental. So that's the 7,134 properties. So let's go through each one of these, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. This is all going to be in a much more detailed email that I'll be sending to the Ethics Commission. So if you are renting out your home as a short-term rental, and you're doing that for more than a total of 14 days, more than 14 days in any calendar year, you arguably would have a prohibited financial interest in the workings of this work group. But I believe that the State Ethics Commission would likely say that because that category represents about 13.4% of all properties on the island, that you would exceed that would exceed the 10% rule, and therefore you would not have a prohibited financial interest on being appointed to the committee, to the work group. In addition, if for some reason the Ethics Commission disagreed with that, there is always the possibility that with respect to appointed board members, and that would be these work group members, that in making the appointments, the select board could make a determination pursuant to section 19B of the ethics law that your financial interest is not so substantial as to affect the integrity of the services that the town expects of you as a member of that work group. And that really is a policy determination that would be made by the select board. And I think such a exemption would be reasonable under the facts as I've described so far. But as with all of these, you'll see, even if there is an exemption, I would recommend that that an individual who rents their house as a short-term rental for more than 14 days, even if they got the exemption from the select board, that you file a disclosure form. And my email is going to contain the form of the disclosures for each of these categories. So that's category one. Are there any questions about if you own yourself a short-term rental?
No. Matt, Brooke?
No.
Good.
No.
Okay. We're good.
Okay. Then the next one is, what happens if you appoint a work group member who works for a real estate agent? Okay. In that circumstance, theoretically, the select board, well, first of all, I don't think the 10% rule applies in that case. So the only other option would be if the select board were inclined to grant the 19B exemption. And I would caution the board to consider that carefully because of the policy implications and the potential precedent. And while I don't know if the Ethics Commission would go behind that determination, my recommendation would be that you stay away from considering an exemption for people who are actually working in the industry. Now, for what is the implication of that for the select board who are going to be appointing these members? Can a select board member who works for a real estate agent vote on appointing members to the work group? And I think this is a close question, but I think one could reasonably argue that because we don't know what recommendations are going to come out of this work group, if any, one could reasonably argue that the financial interest at this point is remote and speculative, which if the Ethics Commission agreed with that determination, and that remains to be seen, as you know, a financial interest, if it's remote and speculative, does not prohibit a municipal employee from participating in a matter in which they have a possibility of a financial interest, as long as it's remote and speculative. If the select board members decided all to vote on appointments to the committee, I am going to provide you with a disclosure form that those members of the select board who have a potential conflict should file. And by the way, that would apply to someone, a select board member who abuts a short-term rental.
John, we have one question from Mr. Iverson from the planning board.
Yes.
Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, thank you. Through you, if I may, so John, if a member is appointed to the work group in an ex officio status, would that change? And I'm talking about someone that's involved in the real estate business. Would that change the dynamic as far as the ethics committee sees it? Or
I think, yes, Mr. Iverson, I think where that would come into play, if a member of the planning board is appointed to the committee in an ex officio capacity, and that member is elected, then this selectman's exemption is not available to elected officials generally. I do not believe the Ethics Commission, however, the Ethics Commission would change the analysis of the 10% rule, as I'm using for shorthand. I think that applies whether you're elected or appointed.
Okay, I mean, my question wasn't necessarily about an official or a member of the planning board, as much as it is a member of the community to be part of the work group that is involved in real estate. Does that make sense?
Jason, could I make a?
Yeah.
I think what Dave is asking is Dave, are you saying ex officio, meaning they don't vote, but they can be involved?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And in direct relation to having a NARAB official on the work group, I guess.
That's a good question.
No, ex officio means that you hold the office by virtue of holding another office.
Okay, well, I guess that's not what I mean. But so I mean a non-voting member of a work. If we appointed, or the select board appoints a NARAB official to be on the work group without a vote.
No, that doesn't change the analysis, because the recusal applies not only to voting, but also to deliberations, which means any discussions that are had among the members of the working group. So if this individual, even though they don't have a vote, can participate in the discussion and deliberations, there would be the potential for a prohibited financial interest there. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, I understand. I just wanted that to be clear. Thank you.
Okay. Now, the third category.
John, real quick, Brooke had a question. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Through you, Jason. However, the work group could invite NARAB to present data or information about the industry as they know it, as a part of data and information collection. They wouldn't be part of deliberations or on the work group, but they would be presenting as subject matter experts.
That's correct, Brooke. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
I think the intent of the select board in creating and appointing this committee is to hold some kind of public hearings, or obviously give the public an opportunity to come before the work group and present their views. And anyone can do that as long as they're not an actual member of the work group, because in that circumstance, they would not be municipal employees for purposes of the conflict of interest law.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John. Thank you.
Okay, so then the third category are those individuals who serve as officers or directives of a nonprofit organization or otherwise represent a nonprofit organization that is engaged in public education and advocacy on policy questions concerning short-term rental regulation. So someone who is appointed to represent the interests of Act Now, for example, would they be precluded from deliberating and voting as a work group member? And my answer to that question is most likely they would not be precluded, because the Ethics Commission has long held that such nonprofit groups engaged in advocacy and education, as long as that group does not engage in trade or commerce, that they would not be considered a business organization for purposes of the conflict of interest law. So you know how you can't participate if your employer has a conflict of interest. That also applies to a business organization of which you are a member. But the Ethics Commission has said these kinds of nonprofit advocacy groups are not business organizations. And so they would not be precluded from serving on the committee and, participating in the deliberation and the voting.
Any questions on that? Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah, I will say here, I just wanted to make one other point here. The creation of this work group came up relatively on the fly at town meeting. And when the motion was made, there was nothing in the motion that required particular groups be appointed to the work group. And had that been part of the motion, the Ethics Commission would say that if you're enabling legislation or vote, including a town meeting votes, expressly designated particular groups to be appointed, then we wouldn't have a conflict of interest question at all. But that did not occur, so that's why we have to go through this further analysis. But I believe, ultimately, if the Ethics Commission agrees with my opinion, that you'll be able to appoint pretty much anybody you want and apply your own sort of membership criteria, with the possible exception of someone who works for a company that is a real estate agent, for example. So the last category are work group members who abut a short-term rental. And based upon the analysis and the information I've been given, because abutters represent 50% of all residential dwellings on Nantucket abut a short-term rental, you've clearly exceeded the 10% rule that the State Ethics Commission applies. So you would not be prohibited from deliberating and voting as a member of the work group. You would, as is the case with all of these categories, however, I would recommend that you file a disclosure. And again, the form of that disclosure will be in my email. So that's pretty much everything I have for you. And I'm happy to answer any further questions, but I would request that you vote to authorize me to seek guidance from the Ethics Commission.
We have a couple questions first, John. On number 4, this is particularly for me. Across the street from me is a short-term rental where I live, but I do not own the property. Same thing? Doesn't matter?
No, you have to own the property for the abutter prohibition to apply.
So, but what's the thinking behind that? Let's say I did own the property. There's no financial gain for me, correct? Like where would the conflict of interest come?
I think the Ethics Commission looks at it as a matter of property value. And if you own the property, then this activity across the street from you could potentially either positively or negatively affect your property value. You don't have that same direct effect if you are renting property as opposed to owning it.
That one's a little hard for me to swallow, but I understand your reasoning.
Yeah,
It's not my reasoning, Jason.
Well-
It's the Ethics Commission.
Well, the reasoning.
No, the information we were sent was from Great Barrington, and there was a disagreement on their board. There was a select board, or whatever they call themselves out there, member, who she was talking about how it was in her neighborhood, and it was harming the neighborhood and harming her values, et cetera. And then there was another board member who had a spouse who had a boyfriend or girlfriend that had a short-term rental, and so they were bickering back and forth. And so I think that those newspaper reports were the ones that sort of came. And I think people were saying that the lady who was saying, "Geez, this is hurting my value," that's where the argument came. Well, wait a minute, you've got a direct conflict. You're taking this position because your value is hurt. And so I think that was where those articles that we kind of all received in the mail came from.
But it's important to understand, Matt, and we actually represent Great Barrington, and we were heavily involved in this analysis. Ultimately, the Ethics Commission agreed that in Great Barrington there was they were facing a general bylaw that would regulate short-term rentals, and Ethics Commission ultimately said that because of the way the bylaw was structured, it would affect more than 10% of the population. So those individuals who abut the property ultimately did not have a conflict, but as long as they filed the disclosure.
How do I know if I abut a short-term rental?
Yeah, what's the standard to find out?
What's the standard?
Well, I'm hoping to actually avoid having to deal with that question, Brooke.
Yeah.
Because if the Ethics Commission says, 50% of all property owners on Nantucket abut a short-term rental, that the analysis ends there and you don't have a conflict. Okay. But come January 1st, you're going to know, because the town is going to have its own registry with street addresses and the identity of the owners and the operators. We don't quite have that same information based upon the state registry, although the streets are listed. I don't believe the street addresses are a matter of public information, however. The address on the street, but the street is.
I think I was kind of maybe trying to point out a little of the absurdity of the argument, of the abutter argument in general.
Right.
Yeah, I abut one, and I didn't know until we got an email that my neighbor was doing it. I think this may be their first year because they renovated their house this winter, but I don't know. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
it hasn't been an issue, next to us. So,
yeah, Matt, the other thing I'm going to say in my email, and I wanted to get the board's permission to say this, is, as you know, currently there are no specific zoning restrictions that are applicable to short-term rentals. But I think it's pretty clear that each year there are more and more properties being converted to short-term rentals. So there are a lot of properties on the island that certainly have the potential to be used as a short-term rental. How many we don't know, obviously, but if you just look at the trends, I think it's a safe statement to say that the number of short-term rentals are increasing year over year. Do you think that's a valid statement to make in this email?
I would, this is my own personal opinion, I would be careful because I still remember when I used to say on my bike tours that there was 80 to 100,000 people here in the summer, and the data platform said it never broke 50. So I think we have feelings that it's going up, but it might not. Maybe there's one year where it didn't go up, maybe it went down, maybe it jumped up a lot the next year. We just don't have the data, and that's the point of Article 39. I don't know what you think or what you think, Dave, on saying something that concrete.
I think that if we break 10% with the number of registered properties on the state website, which is the one data point we have, that's the argument. But I'm not a lawyer, so.
Yeah, I can take that sentence out. Because I'm raising it because I had a bit of a concern about making such a sweeping statement as well. And I think Brooke is right. At 13.4%, we don't really need to make that argument.
Matt, did you have a comment?
No, I think
okay.
That's fine.
Dave?
Thank you again. My understanding of the data is that actually short-term rentals has been pretty flat for us over the past 4 years. So it might not be a great statement to make, even though I think it's a real fear that they're going to grow. But I think that the data shows that they've been flat for the past few years. And then just to kind of add to the concern about neighboring ones that Brooke has expressed. I mean, I feel that even when we kind of burrow down into the info, I think even with multiple owners, I think we're going to find we're still far above that 10% bar. Even with multiple owners, I'd be surprised if it went lower than 40%. So I think that anyone that abuts I feel is pretty safe at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, one comment. I think there's got to be some way, if this doesn't have sort of real estate buy-in, real estate input, we won't get to something that 80 or 90% of the town will agree to. So I think we've got to find some way that their voice is included. Yeah. And I'm not sure what that is yet. One question I had, if this wasn't a town committee, if this was an ad hoc committee, would all of this still apply? If a group of people just decided to sit and do this, would we be going through all this, John?
Well, if town meeting hadn't voted to create the committee and the selectmen did not on its own create the committee, if a bunch of people informally wanted to get together and have a discussion, then I don't think that's a committee of the town. But that's not what happened, Matt, obviously.
Right. Now I understand. I'm just checking what the options are so.
I feel like the options have opened up, Matt, to hear more voices if people are willing to disclose. If we can pull section 19B for 3 of those, right? The abutters, nonprofit advocacy, and those who own or operate a short-term rental.
Yes.
So I feel like that it opens it up quite a bit to have all voices and all points. And I agree with you on the real estate part. We can have public hearings and get as much data and their opinions and expertise.
Right.
Did you bring it up? No. Go ahead, John.
The attorney I spoke to committed to getting us an answer on this as soon as humanly possible, because I try to impress upon him the urgency of wanting to get this issue resolved. The committee appointed, because they have a lot of work to do. And as we know, it doesn't, before you know it, I'll be sitting in town hall writing citizen petitioned articles come October. So obviously there is some sense of urgency, which I tried to impart upon him.
So, Brooke, do you have a comment?
No, I'm prepared to make a motion to recommend that John, however you want us to word this
To
motion.
authorize town council to reach out to the Ethics Commission for guidance?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
We
fine.
have it.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That passes. John, anything else we need to do, vote on, talk about, think about tonight?
On this topic or in general?
on this topic tonight.
I think we're good. I'm good.
Okay. Dave Iverson?
I just wanted to thank John for adding clarity. I think that this will make moving forward a lot easier for everyone involved. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to make a comment. Just in general, I think the key on this is going to be a knowledgeable facilitator with subject matter expertise. At first, I just thought it could be a facilitator, but it needs to be someone who's seen 20, 30, 50 municipalities, how they've handled it, what they've done, what's worked, what hasn't. If we have just a facilitator who's trying to referee all the different viewpoints from Nantucket as though we have the answer, I think we will be we won't be successful. But if we have someone who is, helping lead the process, that has, the knowledge of how to do this and what works, I think that could be hugely helpful. If they say, okay, I'm looking at how you're doing it now, and I'm looking at your GIS maps, and I'm looking at all the data, and here's some good options, and let's talk about those. That's going to be a more informed, useful conversation than everyone showing up saying, we don't think it's that, we think it's this, and the numbers, we interpret it this way. What about this? I think it's, so anyway, that's going to be the key to this, I think, at this point.
And I would add a robust and thorough and transparent community engagement through multiple means, written, digital, in person, that anyone who wants to speak to this work group gets plenty of opportunity to do so throughout the process.
I agree with both of those. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you, John, for tonight. Thank you for doing all this work in a short amount of time.
You're welcome. I'll talk to you all soon.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, board members? Libby? Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.